All right, hopefully everyone can see my screen. I'm now sharing the slide presentation. Well, welcome and thank you all for joining us today. And as you just heard, the session is being recorded because we want to share this on our website for those who are unable to join. I'm Lori Runciman, Director of Grants with London Community Foundation. Today, we want to speak to an important relationship that is between ourselves and the Indigenous peoples of today and the past. These lands have been stewarded by Indigenous peoples for many thousands of years, holding Mother Earth and all that is found in the natural world in highest esteem. We recognize the deep connection and the long-standing relationship between Indigenous peoples and the land of Southwest Ontario, those that came before and those here now. To our neighbors and friends and communities close by, the Chippewa of the Thames First Nation, the Munsee Delaware Nation, the Oneida Nation of the Thames, and our urban Indigenous neighbors, we affirm that we will forward a process of truth and reconciliation as we recognize the harms that are done by colonialism, past and continuing. We share a responsibility for these lands and what happens on these lands, and we will take that responsibility seriously. I'll first briefly share about London Community Foundation. We're one of a network of 191 community foundations in Canada. And our mission is to create a vibrant, smart, and caring community through strategic investing that drives innovative community-based initiatives. The strategic investing mentioned here includes the granting and social impact loans we make, and the community-based initiatives reference includes those projects that we support through the Community Vitality Program. Just to give you an idea of the scope of our investing, in 2021, we granted over $4.7 million to about 265 registered charitable organizations in the London and Middlesex region. $1 million of that was allocated through the Community Vitality Program. On the social impact side, as of the end of last year, we've cumulatively made over $16.5 million worth of investments. Joining me today are Lindsay Ralph, our grants officer, who will be moderating the questions. Lindsay joined the LCF team this past summer, and she is your first point of contact for any questions related to the Community Vitality Program. Al Day, our grants committee chair and member of our foundation's board of directors, and Karna Trentman, our grants committee vice chair and an incoming board member. At a couple of points during our session today, I'll call on Al and Karna to share their insights and guidance, which I know you'll all find extremely helpful as you consider a submission. But first, I'd just like to share more about Al and Karna with you. Al Day is of the Turtle Clan, and his Oneida name is Latuawit. He is one of 9 traditional chiefs of the Oneida Nation Council of Chiefs. He's been married to partner Laurel for 54 years and is the father of Paul and Brian, and he's resided at the Oneida settlement since birth. Al retired in 2007 and rejoined the workforce in 2008. He's currently the executive director of the Namarand Friendship Center and has been in this position since 2011. Under his leadership, Namarand has grown in staff and programs and entered into a number of agreements, including with the City of London, the London and Middlesex Children's Aid Society, and the Thames Valley District School Board. Al has been an involved member of the Oneida community in sports and community service organizations, including over 50 years in leadership positions. He has represented Oneida and Namarand on numerous boards and agencies. Al was instrumental in the establishment of a number of regional and local organizations whose goals are to contribute to the well-being of Indigenous peoples. He has served as a policy analyst for Indigenous organizations in the US and Canada, and has participated in negotiations with federal, provincial, and state governments in both Canada and the US. With respect to London Community Foundation, Al was asked and agreed to join the Back to the River Committee in 2016. Following this, Al was asked to sit on the Grants Committee and joined the board in 2019. Karna Trentman was born in Minneapolis, Minnesota, but grew up in Montreal, Quebec. Although her early studies were in musicology, Karna began her career in communications with the Minority Language Rights Group and moved to a job with Caucus Services for the federal government shortly after. Her career interests changed substantially after moving to London for family reasons. At that time, Karna was hired to provide bilingual supports at the Provincial Mental Health and Addiction Helpline Connects Ontario. Within a few years, she realized that this was the field where she belonged and completed her MSc in Addiction Studies in 2012. Karna was hired as the Coordinated Access Facilitator for Thames Valley in 2015 and moved to Mental Health Association, Thames Valley Addiction and Mental Health Services in November 2018. As Director of Community Services, Karna oversees programs and supports at My Sister's Place, London Coffee House, peer support, community wellness, social enterprise, vocational supports, and public education. Throughout her life, Karna has been a volunteer in various capacities and served on many not-for-profit boards. Some of her favorite pastimes are singing with a symphonic choir and hiking with her dogs. The foundation was very pleased to have Karna join the foundation's grants committee in 2019. So here's an outline of today's session, which includes highlighting what's new, and we'll review some key information about the program. Please note it is not exhaustive. You'll find full program details in the applicant guide, which has been updated for 2023 and is available on our website. Our goal today is to equip you to put your strongest proposal forward should you decide to submit. The presentation portion will take about 20 minutes with time for a Q&A. Feel free to post your questions to the chat box as we move through the presentation, and we will answer as many as possible during the Q&A segment. Okay, to summarize what's new for this year, we have reinstated a minimum funding request amount. Applicants are welcome to request a grant of any amount between $50,000 and $350,000. The general guideline in terms of the maximum figure and does not preclude consideration of proposals requesting more than that $350,000. However, the reason we reinstated the $50,000 minimum is to avoid proponents having to navigate the three-stage process for a comparatively small amount. LCF does have other grant opportunities for which requests under $50,000 may be best suited. I encourage you to especially look at submitting to the Funding Needs Registry, which is really our general intake and best door to come through with the foundation. And the environment was added as a vital sign issue area this year. We know that the state of the environment impacts everyone. Climate change and the destruction it brings worsens the various other issues we face, from food security to racial inequity to well-being. A community's ability to thrive depends upon the climate, and increasingly the most devastating effects of climate change disproportionately affect folks who are already marginalized. I'll share a bit more about vital signs with you in the next slide. Finally, the dates have been updated for 2023, but essentially they do follow the same timing as in 2022. So the first date of most concern to you is the letter of intent due date, which is Friday, February 10th. Vital Signs is LCF's annual checkup on the state of our community and is a national program in partnership with Community Foundations of Canada. Vital Signs examines issues that are significant to well-being and quality of life. By creating awareness of these issues, we can connect philanthropy to the needs of the community, set priorities, and identify opportunities for action. please consider how your proposal addresses at least one of these vital sign issue areas. And I encourage you to visit the Be the Change London website, where you'll find for each of these areas corresponding data and blog posts from local leaders and other content that may inform your proposal. So on this slide and the next are the essential components that make a proposal eligible for the Community Vitality Program. The first bullet point talks about qualified donee. So at this time, the foundation can grant only to qualified donees, which include registered charities, municipal governments, First Nations, and there are some others. For the purposes of the program, the qualified donee that is formally applying for the grant is considered the applicant organization and is responsible for receiving the grant. Those implementing the project along with this applicant organization may include individuals, nonprofits. Capacity to implement the project is a key element. As already explained, the proposal must address one of the vital sign issue areas, and it must be implemented and impact LCF's catchment, which is the City of London, the County of Middlesex, Oneida Nation of the Thames, Chippewa of the Thames First Nation, and Munsee Delaware Nation. And finally, it needs to be proposing systems change and or long-term solutions and changes. Just to build upon that, the first two bullet points here speak to the requirement of partnerships, collaboration, and commitment to optimize and leverage existing or new resources. As mentioned, the funding request must be at least $50,000 and is for no more than a 3-year period. And finally, the planned use of the grant can't include land acquisition, building purchases, or new construction. So if there is a capital component to your funding request, it can only be 50% of it, and it needs to be obviously directly linked to the project that you're implementing. Same goes with staffing expenses. There needs to be that direct link. Grants Committee will evaluate proposals based on the following criteria. It's innovation or newness in approach, methodology, partnerships. Has long-term change or systems change, which could mean that it's altering the current system, or it takes an undesirable trend and turns it around, or it substantially improves results of current methods, or it fills an important unaddressed gap in the community. Balancing the proposal's innovation with accountability is also critical. It needs to be grounded in evidence or a credible change theory. What makes the approach plausible? It needs to articulate a plan to achieve demonstrable outcomes. And there needs to be evidence of capacity to deliver on the proposal's progress and outcomes. Is there the necessary experience and expertise? Is the proposal realistically scaled, and is the plan feasible? Attracting funding from other contributions and from other sources are key. Sharing and using local resources and expertise more effectively, finding innovative efficiencies in systems or services, having a way to sustain the initiative if that's applicable beyond the Community Vitality Grant term, and that there's a detailed, clear plan to secure other funding sources, particularly with consideration to staffing or if your project is programmatic in nature. Finally, it will be evaluated on whether it's led by or that it is meaningfully engaging those who are directly affected by the issue that is being addressed. Is it inclusive of community members with diverse lived experiences, including ethnicity, language, gender, sexual diversity and orientation, socioeconomic status, age, and physical abilities? It identifies the relationships established or the plan to establish those with those intended to benefit from the project, including equity-seeking groups and those with specific socioeconomic needs. So here's where I'd like to invite Karna and or Al to add in anything that they would like to expand upon as to what I've mentioned here before I move into the logistics piece.
Yeah, I could like to say a few words. So just begin, my language, hello everyone. I would say that it's everything that Laurie covered is absolutely critical. And from the point of view of being on a grants committee for a number of years, and the fact that we have I think it's around 14, 15 members, it's really important that you be very succinct in your proposal. It's got to be well written. It has to be well written. And the other thing is that it has to be, we're looking for innovation, and we're looking for people to describe if they have a partnership. You need to ensure that the partnership is very solid, that you have confidence in that. And lastly, as Laurie mentioned, we've added a new criteria, and I think it's absolutely fair to say that each committee member, that the grants committee member, that what they bring to the table is they have various areas that they favor, and I think that's just human nature. And so part of your proposal is going to have to try to capture, again, as much as you can, the interests of everybody. And it's, in my experience, it's been very difficult once we narrow the list down to make an actual selection. And the selection is based principally on two things: what you intend to do, and how do you do it. And that means a well-written proposal. So.
And I think I'll just add that some of the successful kind of projects that we've approved have been where they've been able to collaborate and pull a lot of things together into one project. So for instance, last year, one of the successful proposals was a tiny home sort of a project in Muncie, and it kind of brought together job training and housing, where it was needed in this First Nation, and and then the potential for a sustainable business going forward for the people who are being trained to construct these houses. So I think what really appealed to the members on the committee was just that there were so many people involved, lots of partners. It was sustainable, and it sort of trained people at the same time, gave people housing, which we, all of us living in London know how essential housing is. So I think when there are proposals that can pull a lot of things together and affect a lot of change in different sectors, those are often ones that we would take a second look at anyway.
Thank you, Al and Karna. I really appreciate those thoughts. So I am going to once again share my screen, and I'll just quickly go over a few logistics. So here's the link to apply. It's once again using our SurveyMonkey Apply platform. The portal link goes live tomorrow, and it can be found on the web page listed here. And as I mentioned, please contact Lindsay if you require any technical assistance. If you require an alternative format to submit, we welcome those inquiries. How a submission may progress through the process. The first stage, as mentioned, a letter of intent is due February 10th at 2 p.m. By mid-March, the committee will have completed their review of those letters and will invite a selection of proponents to the second stage, which involves completing an in-depth application. And those applications are due May 2nd. Once again, once the committee has reviewed those applications, they will invite a selection from that to an interview in early June. At the conclusion of the interviews, the committee deliberates and selects those to recommend for funding to the LCF board. And if approved, a grant agreement is then put in place and funding will be released in early fall. But the letter of intent can only be 2 pages in length, and it needs to describe what the project is about and what issues it addresses, the impact of the project, how it will be carried out, who else will be involved, what are their roles. Be sure to include the community members you serve and how your project has incorporated Nothing About Us Without Us. Describe why the proponents have the capacity to undertake the proposal and achieve the outcomes identified. And just at a very high level, share the project's budget and funding needs, including maybe you've got some funders who have already been approached or that you plan to approach. And indicate to which specific expenses LCF granting could be allocated towards. All right, so now it is question time. Lindsay, I'm just wondering, have any questions come in through the chat?
We just have one, and it is, does a non-for-profit that is registered but not registered as a charitable organization qualify?
So they would need to find a qualified donee organization to serve as the applicant organization. But the not-for-profit certainly can be a part of that proposal and is perhaps playing the role of leading the project. But at this point, LCF can make grants payable to qualified donees. Stay tuned though on that point when I share about the Community Services Recovery Fund. So if anyone has questions, please feel free to raise your hands at this time, add to the chat. That would be great.
We have another one in the chat. Can an organization be a lead applicant on one application and a partner/collaborator on another application?
Yes, absolutely. That would not, that is welcome and encouraged.
The next question is asking whether the recording will be sent out. I believe it's going to be available on the website, correct? Matt?
Yes.
Yeah. Are independent schools, which are registered charities, able to apply to the education component, or is it restricted to public schools?
We don't have a restriction on that. The Vitality program, we haven't really, other than that qualified donee requirement, there aren't any other restrictions on who can apply. So that is totally acceptable.
Okay, so there's a question about where the recording will be. So if you go to the Community Vitality section on our website, which is under the grants main heading, it should be on there, I'm guessing. Do capital expenses qualify? Example, building mechanical equipment replacement or building improvements.
Yes, so we've had, so I can give some examples from past recipients. The community wood shop was a past proposal and we were able to support that and the funding, up to half of the funding that we gave them was used to outfit the wood shop. We also supported, this is a number of years ago, the Boys and Girls Club in establishing their recording studio and that kind of new room within the club. Lots of activities happening there. So they obviously needed equipment for that. So even like minor renovations, like if probably they had to do some, put up some walls or take down some walls and do some painting, that kind of thing, as long as it's connected directly to the project. That's the key.
Matt put up the link to where you can find the recording later today. And that is all we have in the chat right now.
Okay. No, Al or Karna, if you had anything else that you wanted to mention.
I just want to agree with what Karna said about the type of proposal, and one reason why we like the tiny homes proposal was it brought two main proponents to the table, and they had the vision that the initial purpose for doing this was to provide some homes, but at the same time they're also projecting that potentially could lead to a business opportunity. And that's the key, is what is the future of your project or proposal. You know, ideally, the more you're able to talk about that, and ideally it's going to make some difference in the future, the better it really fits the I guess the dialogue that we have as a committee. And this, I don't know how this sounds to you, but I would encourage you to provide well-written proposals. Make it difficult for us to select. I mean that sincerely. Make it difficult for us. You know, and that's, I don't know how that sounds to you, but the more time and effort you put into it, the more you think about, I guess that's the key thing, the more you think about what you're going to do and how you're going to do it is really, really key. Because what you want to do is when you present your proposal and the committee's looking at it, ideally, we're going to have a discussion about what you're doing, not a question about how are they going to do it.
And then I would just add, like, dream big and be as creative as you want. And the unique thing about the community vitality grants is there aren't a lot of restrictions. I work in social services and health, and there's always really tight criteria about what you can and cannot do. So this is an opportunity for people in the community to come up with really creative ideas. We were going to rule out some arts, like we talked about, do we want arts proposals? And then we said, yeah, we want to just have the field huge and big so that people can dream big and be creative. And we've seen some phenomenal proposals, I think, come by over the years. So yeah, not really a lot of limitations. I mean, you heard what they were in the presentation, but people can really, dream big.
Thank you both. So if as you start to submit or even just be considering further and you have other questions, please reach out to Lindsay, and she'll be happy to direct you to resources. Yeah, we're here for you. So respecting everyone's lunch hour, and it's okay that we'll wrap up early. I'll just share my screen once again and conclude. Okay, so just wish to quickly mention the Community Services Recovery Fund will open for application January 6th. This is the one where I said stay tuned, because non-qualified donees can apply and receive funding directly from this program. So the Community Service Recovery Fund is a $400 million investment from the Government of Canada to support charities and nonprofits as they focus on how to adapt their organizations for pandemic recovery. This fund supports community service organizations, including nonprofit organizations, Indigenous governing bodies, and registered charities located across Canada. We encourage you to read the eligibility criteria and learn about the program on the Community Services Recovery Fund website. The deadline for applications is February 21st. So hopefully the spacing of February 10th and February 21st gives you a little bit of breathing time. And I've made note there of a couple of upcoming webinars. I'd really like to thank you all for your engagement today, and special appreciation to Al and Karna and Lindsay for your support, and thanks Matt for your background help. We look forward to receiving your proposals, and please reach out, as I said, if you have any questions as you work on your submission. Thank you so much for attending.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Lori.